Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Crime and Entertainment. We have here a very familiar face to the show. Please welcome back again, Ignacio Esbon. Ignacio, how are you, my friend?
Hey, buddy. Hollywood Wade, what's going on, man?
Nothing much, man. Staying busy. How about yourself?
Good, good, good. I love we do this monthly behind the serial killer. This is really fascinating stuff here. Your audience is really going to dig this one.
Yeah, I mean, we started out with the Behind the Gangster months ago. I think I dealt with Anthony Ruggiano. I thought that was really kind of detailed because, these movies highlight these gangsters. So it's good to kind of go and figure out who the real people were. The same thing is said to these serial killers. There was a period of time to where they were pumping out movies, and a lot of them were B movies, like straight to DVD or whatever. Bundy, Gacy, Dahmer, Ed
Sure.
Gein. A lot of them were just like I said, B movies, straight to DVD, but still, they take liberties. Hollywood takes liberties. So it's good
Sure.
to kind of dive into it. But, recently now with, all these Peacock and Netflix documentaries, sometimes you get a little bit more in depth. A
The
lot of,
docuseries
but
have done well.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
docuseries are fantastic. Now, I've
Yeah.
actually, one of the last trips I took, I was on the plane and I got a chance to watch the Netflix documentary. And oddly enough, the lawyer that Gacy wound up going to, and he actually confessed, as we'll get into the story here.
Yeah.
Um, the lawyer's son has a podcast and was actually at CrimeCon, and I got to meet him.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. Small
yeah,
world.
it was pretty interesting. I was like, dude, I was just listening to your dad talk on the way over here.
Yeah. And that's a tough decision. But when you get that kind of confession, man, holy smokes.
Oh yeah, yeah, and
You're,
we'll get into it here, man, for sure, because it was crazy.
mm-hmm.
So John Wayne Gacy, that's who we're talking about today. Born March 17th, 1942. I don't say this about many people, but gladly he left this world May 10th of 1994.
Yeah.
American serial killer, sex offender who raped and tortured and murdered at least 33 young men throughout
Yeah.
his
And,
time
and I
there.
think the number's a lot higher. Wade,
I do
I think
too.
numbers. Yeah. And I'll tell
There's
you
a
why.
lot of speculation that number could be a lot higher.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
majority of these, as we'll get into, was buried in his damn house, which is crazy in and of itself.
It is.
Near Chicago, Illinois. He became known as the Killer Clown due to his public performances as a clown prior
Pogo
to
the
the discovery of
Pogo the
his
clown,
crime.
right?
Yep. Polo.
Pogo the clown.
That is
Unbelievable.
like one of this story is one of the reasons why, like, to this day, that and the movie It, I still don't really like clowns. And now Terrifier is kind of putting that into people of not really digging clowns also.
Yeah.
But as we talk about the things that this man done, the fact that you could dress up as a clown and prance around like these kids and stuff like this, it's just like, how does one, like, if you're going to be that way, be all in that way? How you can bounce between different personalities. To me, that's even scarier.
That's extremely scary. What a sociopath, psychopath that's so cold. And we'll talk about some of the doc in interviews and some of the things he says later, and we'll talk about. He's just so cold.
Yeah.
So cold. Unbelievable. He has that kind of persona. And I think his upbringing, we can talk a little bit about that, has a lot to do with what happened to him.
Yeah. Just a quick overview here before we get into, like, we'll start from his upbringing, like you said, and kind of work our way forward. He committed most of his murders in his ranch style home. Typically, he would lure a victim over and get them in the handcuffs by different games under the pretenses he was demonstrating a magic trick,
Yeah.
or, saying he was, doing this and that. A lot of times he would lure them over with the premise of watching pornography or stag films, as they call it. He would
Free alcohol.
Yep, free alcohol. And these were like young adolescents. So of course, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
appeals to them.
Mm-hmm.
He would then rape them, torture them, held them. Some of them he would hold captive, strangle them, and he would do like a garrote, like he would get it behind where he twisted it, and it would just, I mean, it would,
Tourniquet. A
yeah,
tourniquet death. Horrible. Horrible death.
horrible to think about. 26 victims were buried in the crawl space of his home. 3 were buried elsewhere on the property, and 4 were discarded in the Des Plaines River. 26 bodies buried in his crawl space in his house.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
I
That's
mean,
unbelievable.
that is just bananas, man. And he had previously, and this is all previously, he was convicted in 1968 of sodomy
Yes,
of
he
a
was.
teenage boy in Waterloo, Indiana, sentenced to 10 years for that, but only served, I think, like 18 months.
Not much. Not much.
Not much at all. Murdered his first victim, at least on record, in 1972, murdered twice more by the end of 75, and murdered at least 30 victims after his divorce from his second wife in 76. And investigators were also looking into Robert Priest was kind of the one that kind of brought him down.
Yeah.
The last murder that he did, that was kind of what got the ball rolling on this. And eventually he was arrested. He didn't really confess. He was trying to fight it, but he did get found convicted. And Gacy was sentenced to death on March 13th, 1980. And he was eventually executed by lethal injection in the Statesville Correctional Center on May 10th, 1994.
Ironically, the same year that Dahmer was also killed.
Really?
Dahmer was killed in 94 by an inmate that he clubbed him, right? In the same, within like months apart, and also Gacy with execution. So two of the most prolific serial killers of American history died in the same year, months apart. One was murdered and one was executed. But interesting enough, they both died. I picked that up when I wrote my book on the psychopath killers, and I kind of picked some. When you do a lot of research, you kind of pick weird little things like that, and I picked up on that. Another thing I picked up on, and just a little side note, and we'll go back here. He was interviewed about Dahmer, and I saw an interview. He said, "What did you think about Dahmer, the serial killer?" Because he this happened, and he was arrested in the early 90s. He'll be later executed. He said, "Oh, don't compare me to a guy like that. That guy's a monster." So, what are you?
Yeah.
What are you? I mean, give me a break. I mean, you're worse than Dahmer. You killed more than Dahmer, and these were kids. These were kids.
I mean, granted, you're splitting hairs here when you talk about which serial killer was more humane, but at least Dahmer wasn't killing like young teenage boy. I mean, Dahmer had a few young ones, but I mean, not quite as bad as Gacy.
But the way you read it, you put that tourniquet, and the way he talked about it, you're squeezing the life out of him, and he's telling them, he's sodomizing them, he's telling them, "I'm going to kill you. You're not going to live through this. I'm hurting." And he keeps on twisting and twisting and twisting. Sometimes he would let them for hours just die that way. He was a sick individual. Yeah, sick individual. I thought that was something when he said about Dahmer. "Hey, don't compare me to Dahmer." No, you're worse than Dahmer.
Yeah.
In many ways, you're worse than Dahmer. Dahmer died a horrible death, and so did him. And what his last words were? "Kiss my ass." Can you imagine that? His last words were "kiss my ass." And you know what his last meal was?
Oh, it was a lot. I got it in there. We're gonna get into it right
now. Oh my gosh, that's a lot. And I think that's some of the reason why people get outraged, Wade. And now their last meals get cut out in a lot of states. Why the taxpayers, they didn't show any mercy to the victims. Why are they getting this elaborate last meal?
Yeah, and Gacy, some people that we've covered didn't really partake in the last meal or got something very simple. Gacy had a lot of shit. We'll cover.
He ate well. He ate well with his family in a private park. Why would they do any of that? That's sickening.
That I didn't know that.
With his whole family. Why would they? And he was a sick dude, and he had divorced. And you know what? None of that sat well with me. That's for sure. Especially my background in law enforcement. None of that sits well with me.
What do you know about Gacy's upbringing here?
Gacy's father, what I was reading, was a World War I veteran.
Yep.
Very tough guy, right? But he was somewhat abusive and alcoholic, right? I mean, if those who studied the First World War, that was a brutal war, right? A war there in the trenches of attrition there, absolutely brutal. And you come back from that, of course, there's going to be some issues there. And besides that, but he also was a drunk. And I guess he saw his son as being soft, right? Mm-hmm. He's the only son he has, being soft. And we don't know why, because he would have a tendency for young boys. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, he would be married. Yeah, he would have children, but he preferred young boys. And that's where he will start all these problems with them. He even said at one point, his father thought he was wrong. When he was the manager, his father-in-law helped him become the manager of 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 KFCs, Kentucky Fried Chickens, in Waterloo, Iowa.
Yep.
Man, he paid at that time, 60s, you're getting paid well. You're the manager of 3 KFCs, right? You're married with kids. His father said, "Oh, son, you turn out well." Soon after that, it turned viciously bad for him.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that.
Well, he would, like you said, he would kind of ridicule him a lot, call him mama's boy, told him he would never amount to nothing, things like that. And Gacy was overweight and unathletic as a child due to a heart condition. His father even accused him one time of faking it, just because he wasn't, as tough as some of the other kids, around his age. In 1960, Gacy was 18. and became involved in politics for a little bit. He was a precinct captain for a local Democratic Party candidate, and this led to more criticism from his father, who called him a patsy.
Yeah, I did.
So it's kind of like no matter what he was doing, the dad was kind of breaking his balls a little bit, so to speak. And he got a car. From what I understand, the father kind of financed a car. Gacy had to make payments to him. If he ever done anything wrong, the father would take the keys. Gacy actually got a second set of keys made. And then one night after his father went to sleep, he drove the car to Las Vegas with $136 in his pocket to reside with his cousin.
That's right.
Now, this is a kind of a key point here with kind of setting the stage for just the kind of sick shit this dude was into. Gacy worked in the city's ambulance service before being transferred to the Palm Mortuary. All right. He worked as a mortuary attendant for 3 months, observing mortician, embalming dead bodies, and occasionally serving as a pallbearer. He slept on a cot behind the embalming room, later confessed that one evening, while alone, he climbed into the coffin with a teenage male, embracing and caressing the body before experiencing a sense of shock. This experience prompted Gacy to return home. Like, what do you think you're going to get out of it climbing in there? Like, I mean, and then you're caressing him.
Yeah.
What did you do? Just have an attack of reality and holy shit, I'm in here with a dead body. Like, what did he think was going to happen?
What do you think you're doing in there? What no normal person, I don't care. I remember when I was 18, I don't think I'll do anything. I mean, I wouldn't want to work in that kind of place, but you know.
I would not want to work around dead bodies, period. I'll do a sidebar. I don't like to get off topic when we talk about these types of people, but I had a guy that I was friends with in high school. His family owned like the one of the biggest funeral parlors in the area. There was two of them. If you died, you went to one of these two, so everybody was kind of split who they went with. And, I just never wanted to go over to that dude's house. Like, I never wanted to hang around him. And I worked third shift for a long period of time. And I would come in, off third shift. So it's bright and early in the morning. I would go into a little local restaurant there. A lot of your old timers are going to be in there eating breakfast, a lot of your retirees and stuff. And his dad would come in there and just kind of look around and be like, just checking out my future prospects, just laughing and cutting it up. And I just be like, man, there's no way I could.
It's a business people are dying to get in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Shortly thereafter, Gacy enrolled in Northeastern Business College. Despite having failed to complete high school, he actually graduated in 1963, took a management trainee position with Nunn Bush Shoe Company. That's an interesting little career path too. In 1964, he transferred to Springfield, Illinois to work as a salesman, eventually promoted him to department manager. And in March of that year, he became engaged to Marilyn Myers, who was a coworker at the time.
Right.
During the courtship, Gacy joined the local JC's. Now, I didn't even know what JC's was. I had to do some research here to figure out exactly what that is. The same year that he had his second homosexual experience, according to Gacy, a colleague in the JC's pilled him in drinks and wanted to spend the evening on his sofa. The colleague then performed oral sex on him while he was drunk. Right. Gacy had risen to the position of vice president in the Springfield JC's and was named third most outstanding JC in Illinois.
Yeah, and before we go farther, I also remember reading that allegedly he was molested when he was a young boy.
Gacy?
Yes.
Yeah.
That he was also molested when he was a young boy. So those are all the factors that I think fit in. An abusive father, he's been molested. And then you talk about everything else, I think leads him down this path where he ends up. And a lot of these guys say later, Wade, is that I was punished. I want to punish those who are also young kids because I suffered during that same time period.
Yeah, they pass it on.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Now, he winds up marrying Marilyn Myers. Now, that was her father was the bigwig of the KFCs you were mentioning earlier.
Yes.
They subsequently purchased 3 Kentucky Fried Chickens, and he was offered a lucrative, pretty salary at the time. It was $15,000 per year.
Yeah. At
that time, which is equivalent to about $144,000 today, plus a share of the restaurant's profits. So not bad money there for Mr. Gacy.
No, he's doing well, and that's Waterloo, Iowa.
Yeah,
you can do a lot with that.
So popping there for sure. with the chicken business. He opened a club in his basement. Now, this was key. This was kind of a way to lure these people over here. Where his employees could go over there and drink alcohol, play pool. And although Gacy employed teenagers of both sexes, he socialized really only with young men, give many of them alcohol before he would make the sexual advances. If they rebuffed, he would claim that his advances were a joke or a test of morals. That's where a lot of these people, and this goes for across the board. This goes for men that are trying women, possibly that are married. Everybody wants to make that advance. And Gacy said this in an interview, like a police interview. He said, you open the door and then you see what happens. If they slam it, then you just move on. You figure out a way to sidebar. If they walk through it, then you can go further. And so people will say that, oh, we should do this. And if somebody says, well, okay, I'm game, then you keep continuing. If they shut it down, then you come up, oh, I was just kidding, man. That type of thing. That seems like that's how he would operate, because he even said, you go around making advances, especially at that time to, younger men, you might get popped in the mouth.
Yeah. So that's why he picked young teenage boys.
Yeah.
And experience. He and that's why he used alcohol too a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get them loosened up there, so to speak.
Yeah.
Gacy's wife gave birth to a son in February in 1966 and a daughter in 67. Gacy later described this period of his time in his life as perfect. He had finally earned his father's approval when Gacy visited in July of 1966.
That's right.
His father privately apologized for the abuse it inflicted on him and said, son, I was wrong about you. And he shook his hand.
He was right about him. Yeah. He was absolutely right about him.
Absolutely right.
But I don't think he had no idea that he would become, he thought he'd be just a soft guy, whatever. He had no idea he'd be a prolific serial killer. That's for sure. Man, wow.
Here's where we kind of get into things start to get a little bit more heavy with his, I guess, desires. In Waterloo, Gacy again joined the JC chapter, regularly offering extended hours to the organization. In addition to the 12, 14-hour days he was working, regardless of what he might have done on his off time, managing a restaurant, that's a lot of hours. That was 12, 14-hour days in and of itself. And then he would often provide fried chicken, for these events that he would done. And he and the other Waterloo JCs were deeply involved in drug abuse, pornography, prostitution, and wife swapping. So I don't know what the hell the JCs had going on there, but that's I can think of another word or two for that.
You wouldn't think of that in Waterloo, Iowa, but look at that.
Yeah. And Gacy was considered ambitious and a bragger, and the other JCs held him in high regard for his fundraising work, and he was named outstanding vice president of the Waterloo JCs and served on the board of the directors. So this is like a fucking low rent version of Skull and Bones here or something. They're putting on that front, and then meanwhile they're partying, their wife swapping. I never got word that him and his first wife were doing that though. Did you hear anything about that?
Well, I know that he told, was his first or second wife, it's in my book, I don't remember it right now, that after they had their last kid, he said he was done having sex with her and that he just likes young boys.
That was the second one.
Yeah, and then that was it.
Okay.
So I could imagine if he's not having sex with her and he's done, he won't care what she's doing.
Yeah, it doesn't care him more for them. Let's talk about the assault on Donald Voorhees here, which should have sent Gacy to prison for a while. Like a lot of lives would have been saved had he went to prison like he should have.
Yeah.
In August of 1967, Gacy sexually assaulted 15-year-old Donald Voorhees Jr. Now, he was the son of Donald Edwin Voorhees. He was a local politician, fellow JC. Gacy lured him to his house with the promise of showing him heterosexual stag films, pornography films, that he would play at the JC events. Gacy, got him there with the pretense, obviously, of alcohol to watch some of these films, and wanted him to engage in mutual oral sex, adding, you have to have sex with a man before you start having sex with a woman. So at that age where you can kind of just throw some BS that people maybe haven't had that talk, you know what I'm saying, back then. Nowadays, everybody has those talks about, all right, if somebody does this, it's bad, or you don't do this at a lot earlier age. Back then, I don't know how many of those talks was being had in the home.
I don't know how weak, but I tell you, 14, 15, anybody tells me that, I won't be buying to that because I have no urges for that either. I don't know what the hell that's about.
Yeah, I'd just be like, I don't think that's how it works, man. I mean,
no, I don't think so, dude. Get out of here.
Thank God my dad was able to get me some of those illegal cable boxes, and I seen how normal relationships are supposed to go there.
I think everybody started early with Penthouse or Playboy or something, man. It's like, nah.
Yeah, Channel 60 got me all the I needed to know how things are supposed to go there back in the day. So shout out to Hermie Williamson there, my pop. Over the following months, Gacy abused several other youths, including one who encouraged or whom he encouraged to have sex with his own wife before blackmailing him into performing oral sex on him. So he's getting these girls to be with his wife. Jesus. All right. Gacy also tricked several teenagers into believing he was commissioned to conduct homosexual experiments for scientific research and paid them $50 a piece.
I don't know how these kids buy into that. It's just shocking.
A lot of low money back there. You remember we talked about when what was it? Fish cut off the guy's his man parts there and gave him a $10 bill and put him on. It's low balling here for all this shit.
But for those times, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, well, the $10.
1890. Yeah, 1890. That was a lot of money. But $50 back in the 1960s, and for a young kid, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. Still, I'm not doing that. I don't care. You can do your own damn experiments. In 1968, Voorhees told his father that Gacy had sexually assaulted him. Voorhees Sr. immediately informed the police. Gacy was arrested, charged with performing oral sex sodomy on Voorhees and attempted assault of a 16-year-old Edward Lynch. Gacy obviously vehemently denied the charges, demanding that he take a polygraph test. The results of that test were indicative of deception. Yeah. So obviously he's lying. It's been pretty much documented that taking a polygraph test is not a good idea, regardless of the situation. They're not admissible in court.
No, so and you can beat them.
Yeah,
you can definitely beat them. There's no doubt about it. There's people who know how to beat them. You just have, and I'm not here to tell people how to do it, but there's ways to do it. So yeah, it can go either way.
Gacy continued to publicly deny any wrongdoing. Charges were politically motivated. Voorhees Sr. had opposed Gacy for nomination for the appointment of president of the Iowa JCs. Several of the other JCs found Gacy's story credible and rallied to his support. However, on May 10th of 68, Gacy was indicted for the sodomy charge.
Yes.
So he promised one of his employees, 18-year-old Russell Schroeder, I think was his name, $300 if he physically assaulted Voorhees in an effort to discourage the boy from testifying against him in court. Schroeder lured Voorhees to an isolated country park, sprayed mace in his eyes, then beat him up. Voorhees escaped and reported the assault to police, identifying Schroeder as his attacker. They arrested him the following day. While initially denying any involvement, Schroeder soon confessed that Gacy was the one that put him up to it.
Right.
And police arrested Gacy and laid an additional charge of hiring Schroeder to assault and intimidate the witness. So this would send Gacy to prison. And he was supposed to, it says on September 12th, he was ordered to undergo a psychiatric evaluation.
Yeah.
At a hospital. 2 doctors concluded he had antisocial personality disorder and psychopathy. He was unlikely to benefit from treatment, and that his behavior pattern was unlikely to bring him into repeated conflict with society. Doctors concluded that he was mentally competent to stand trial. So that's saying you're smart enough to go to trial, but that you're probably going to get into some shit like this again. But yet he still got out. Like I don't understand it.
I think it was because of what he did there. He was a model. What I remember, he was a model prisoner.
Yeah,
for good behavior. But you know what? A guy like that, what he did, especially when he tried to tamper with investigation, he should have done his full time after the second strike. That was it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's convicted of the sodomy. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, right? And then, like you said, during his incarceration, he became a model prisoner.
Yeah.
Within months, he had risen to the position of a head cook.
Yep.
He joined the inmate JC chapter. increased his membership. Now listen to this. Increased his membership from 50 to 650 in less than 18 months.
That's impressive.
That is impressive. I mean, that's
That's a
again,
lot
these
of numbers.
guys, a lot of these guys have, that's almost like was Jonestown. What was his name?
Uh, what's that?
Who was the guy, the preacher,
Jim Jones.
Jim Jones. Yeah,
Jim
that's
Jones.
almost Jim Jones-esque right there, getting that many people to join
Yeah.
with this. And that's again in less than 18
You know,
months.
he is, if watching the interview, Wade, he is charismatic.
Oh yeah.
He has a way about him.
Yeah.
And the way he talks. And I saw why he was Pogo the Clown, and then he becomes this killer because the way he talks to people, and you see him a lot doing that. And we'll talk later, but I found it intriguing and scary. We'll go more when he did an interview with a reporter, right? And he knows he's going to be extra and all that. He asked him to give him, he gave him a little, like a little rope. And he said, "Can you show me how you did the tourniquet and all that?" So he said, "Take my handcuffs off." Did you see this interview?
Yeah.
And he starts tying it. He says, "You better," I say, "Well, you better be careful now." I mean, the guy who killed 30 some people making jokes, bro.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
And his demeanor in some of those
It is scary.
interviews is very, it's very chilling. I'll just say I'll use that for chilling. But you know, to give him his credit here, he secured an increase in the inmates' daily pay in the prison mess hall, supervised several projects to improve conditions of the inmates, including the installation of a miniature golf course.
Wow.
Presented with the Distinguished Service Award for his efforts with the inmate JCs in 1970. In June of 69, he was denied parole, and to prepare for a second scheduled parole hearing in 1970, he completed 16 high school courses, obtaining his diploma in 69. On Christmas Day, his father actually passed away of cirrhosis.
That's right.
When informed of this news, Gacy collapsed to the floor sobbing. His request to go to the funeral for a compassionate release was denied.
That's what.
This is the key. He was granted parole with 12 months probation on June 18th of 1970, having served 18 months of a 10-year sentence for sodomy.
That's just not right.
No, it's not. I don't know. And we still have some of this shit going on today, but like, I don't understand how you can let people out like that. Conditions of his probation included a nightly curfew, and Gacy relocated to Chicago to live with his mother. Once he was released, he told a friend and fellow JC member, Clarence Lane, who picked him up from the prison, he would remain steadfast in his belief that Gacy was innocent and that he would never go back to jail, and that he was intended to reestablish himself in Waterloo. However, 24 hours, he relocated to Chicago. And this is where a lot of his, horrible, horrible deeds would start when he got to Chicago.
Yeah, when he go there. And you would think after the psychologists and psychiatrists say he's a psychopath, right? He's antisocial, right? He most likely is going to repeat and be a problem. You know what? Maybe he should do a little longer than 18 months, right?
Yeah.
That was a failure there. So now we go to Norwood Park Township, Illinois.
Yep.
The famous ranch house.
West Somerdale Avenue.
Let me ask you, I was doing a little research. Is that still there?
No, I'm pretty sure they tore it down.
They tore it down, like did Dahmer's apartment, the Oxford apartment. A year later, after that, House of Horror, they demolished it. But there's a lot of places still House of Horrors that's still around. People are always fascinated by like that. Amityville Horror, remember Amityville? That house is still there. O.J. Simpson, like the apartments there in Brentwood.
They've changed that Amityville house around. I want to say it might have even been moved. I don't really know how you're going to move a house like that.
That's weird.
But I know that they did change the design around because people were going to it, obviously wanting to look and take pictures, because it had that very sinister look of, kind of like two eyes, the half windows or corner windows or whatever. But I do think it's been changed. I would love to see that house.
Menendez Brothers in Beverly Hills.
Mm-hmm.
That's horrible. Horrible. It's in my book. All that stuff's in my book there. Infamous L.A. Murders, another book, which I wrote, which I talk about all this stuff here.
So Gacy actually got that house from financial assistance from his mother.
Yeah.
So little did she know what the hell she was financing here. This house would be the last place a lot of these kids would see. Second marriage and divorce.
Yes.
So in 71, shortly after Gacy and his mother moved into the house, he became engaged to Carol Hoff, whom he had briefly dated in high school. So I'm assuming Carol knew about this man's past. I don't really know. Carol and her two young daughters from a previous marriage moved into the Gacy home soon after that. They were married July 1st, 1972.
This is 72 already.
Yes, 72 already after he gets married to the new wife, Carol.
Let me tell you a quick story in 1970.
Okay.
So I put this in context where I already think he's already killing people because of what happened here. I saw a interview, which was fascinating, of almost a victim who escaped Gacy's call in 1970. He said 1970. This happened in a resort on a lake, and I don't remember the name of the exact resort, but I can look it up there. Where he was 14, and Gacy approached him. He was 14-year-old male, right? He's shirtless, right? He's in the water, coming in and out, and he's asking him, "Hey, what's there to do around here in this small little town?" And he said, "Oh, if you like fishing, there's fishing and all that." And he keeps on asking him, "No, what's there to do around here?" Like implying other things. And according to almost a potential victim, he goes, "I already told you what we're doing here." He says, "Do you like alcohol?" He's 14 years old. He said, yeah. I said, well, I've got a cooler full in my little apartment and we can go out there. So, I don't know about you, but I think 14, a stranger tells me, "Hey, I got some alcohol. And what do you want to do around here?" I don't think I'll be going there, but, gets on his bike. Kids sometimes make bad decisions. He goes in there. And I think I would get chills when you close the door behind me and you lock it. I think that gets my attention, right? And he says, these are things that already start getting his attention. He starts moving the cooler, gives him a beer, and he said, "Hey, you like magazines?" Well, you think you'll give him something, Playboy or Penthouse, who was thinking about, I think, Playboy. He gives him gay magazines. And he's like, "Well, no, this is not what I was thinking about." When he goes through there and he knows the tub is full of ice, which is weird. And his face looks like it starts changing. He starts closing the blinds, right? These to me, I think, is a hint something bad's going to happen. So he's able to, and he opens up a suitcase and he shows him full of handcuffs and other things in there. I think that's when your heart starts pumping big time.
Yeah, I'm out.
I think I'm in danger. I'm in danger. So the guy was able to make up an excuse, push the cooler around, and able to jet through the door. There's more to a little bit to the story. And the kid didn't have a shirt at the time, and Gacy's grabbing him. But because he's able to get off his grasp and get on his bike and get out of there. 3 years later, same location, but he's older now, 18, right? Bigger and stronger. He sees Gacy again. He said, but he knew him as Gacy. He knew him as whatever name he has him. And he goes, "Hey, man, you were the guy that tried to grab me in the apartment, didn't you?" And Gacy denies it. And he goes, "Well, I'm a little bigger now. And I think I can handle myself now because, he's bigger and he's gotten a little fatter." And this was 74, maybe, the second time they're around there. And then his supervisor gets involved and say, "Listen, break it up. We don't need any problems here, whatever." And Gacy just escapes, denying the whole thing, but he knows him. And then, of course, years later, he sees his picture in the paper and goes, "Holy smokes, I could have been a victim there."
Yeah.
That's 1970. And they said they had a lot of bodies. I'm going to get the name on that lake that young kids will come up dead. So I think he was already killing before that.
I do too. We're going to start getting into the victims here, but one of the things that helped him after the Kentucky Fried Chickens that he was running, he opened up a very successful contract business.
Yes, he did.
PDM Contractors. Now, Gacy established a part-time construction company, as we said, painting, decorating, and maintenance, PDM contracting. Gacy worked evenings on his construction contracts while still as a cook during the day. He's doing the chicken, so he's doing this simultaneously. Initially undertook minor repairs work, but then later expanded to big projects such as interior design and remodeling. And by 75, and I don't want to jump too far ahead because a lot happened in there, but by 75, his work was expanding. And by 78, PDM's annual revenue was over $200,000. So in 1978, he's bringing in $200,000 annually. That's a lot of money, man.
That's not bad. That's pretty good.
But this job that he had, he was able to employ a lot of young men.
Yeah.
Which again was his, all these guys seem to find ways to put themselves around men, be it, pastors and, whatever. They figure out a way to put themselves in the company of young men. So that was one way he did it. Another way, which we spoke of earlier, was Pogo the Clown.
Pogo the Clown. Yeah.
Now, through his mentorship with a local moose lodge, Gacy became aware of the Jolly Joker Clown Club, whose members were regularly performed at fundraising events and parades, in addition to volunteering and entertaining people or children at children's hospitals. Gacy joined the club and created his own character, Pogo the Clown, and Patches the Clown, devising his own makeup and costumes. He described Pogo as the happy clown, whereas Patches was more of a serious character. Gacy seldom earned money for these performances and later said that acting as a clown allowed him to regress into childhood. So very, very, very strange stuff there. You got,
and especially his smile. What was that traditional smile? It's more sinister.
It was sinister. And I think like even before, obviously now we know what he did, so we can just kind of look and know, and that's creepy. But even then, it just wasn't like
wasn't normal
clown outfit. It was just, it was a little something
sinister.
Different.
Sinister.
Yeah. And you know, he was still around this whole time, still into politics, still politicking, you know, still doing all that. But, you know, he really begins to start ramping up the murders here. By record, Gacy's first known murder occurred January 3rd of 72. I'm with you. I think there was more before this.
Oh, yes.
I think as far as record, this was it. According to Gacy's later account, following a family party at a previous evening, he drove to the Civic Center in the Loop area early morning to view a display of an ice sculpture. He lured 16-year-old Timothy Jack McCoy from Chicago Greyhound bus terminal into his car. McCoy was on his way to his father's house in Omaha, Nebraska, and he informed Gacy that his bus to Nebraska wasn't due until noon. Gacy took McCoy on a sightseeing tour of Chicago, then drove him to his home with the promise that he could spend the remainder of the night and he would be driven back to the station to catch the bus. Now, prior to McCoy's identification, he was known as the Greyhound busboy. A lot of these people that Gacy would pick up were runaways, stowaways, drifters, you know, so a lot harder to nail
Piece
down.
It together.
Yeah, as far as people searching. Gacy claimed he woke up early following the morning to find McCoy standing in his bedroom doorway holding a kitchen knife. He jumped up from the bed. McCoy raised both arms in a gesture, you know, of surrender, accidentally cutting Gacy's forearm. Gacy disarmed him, banged his head against the bedroom wall, kicked him, and then eventually he was stabbed. Gacy then grabbed McCoy, wrestled him to the floor, and then stabbed him repeatedly again in the chest.
Wow.
As McCoy lay dying, Gacy claimed he washed the knife in the bathroom, went to the kitchen, and saw makings of breakfast on the table. Like, what's
psychopath?
Do that and then go make breakfast?
Yeah, that's right. He's bleeding. I'm gonna eat.
And then he buried McCoy in the crawl space and later covered his grave with a layer of concrete. This would be done repeatedly throughout the next few years. In an interview several years later, Gacy said that he immediately after killing McCoy, he felt totally drained, yet noted that as he stabbed McCoy, he listened to the grunts and the gasping, and he experienced a mind-numbing orgasm. He added, "That's when I realized death was the ultimate thrill."
Yeah, goodness. That's what Bundy, he would have his also orgasms. All these guys get off on this stuff too, which is sick.
Another one we'll mention, John Bukovich. Remember him? So July 31st, 1975, 31st.
The wrestler?
No, the wrestler got away. John Bukovich didn't get out.
Oh, he didn't get away. Okay, that's another one.
This was the one. He was I think he was friends with the wrestler. Bukovich was friends with the wrestler. They both drove like Mopar cars.
Okay.
So on July 31st, 1975, Bukovich, an 18-year-old PDM employee, disappeared. His car was later found abandoned with his jacket and his wallet inside, the keys in the ignition. The wrestler, which have his name, Antonio, let's see what his name was, Adanucci? Antonio Adanucci, I think his name was. That was the wrestler. Gacy tried to lure him in there. He did lure him in there, slapped handcuffs on him. But that kid managed to only one.
This is crazy.
To get out.
This was in the kid's house.
Yeah.
In the kid's house. He tried to kill him in the kid's house, not his house. and they were drinking in the kid's family house, right? And he was able to, when he left, because he was able to get his hand out of the cuff. He was a good wrestler. When he came back, he pretended he was still cuffed. He took him from the legs down and threw him and pinned him and reversed him. And one of Gacy's famous sayings, I guess, was, "You were the only one not only took the handcuffs off, but put them on me."
Yeah.
And how did that end? He ended up arguing, and he said, "Listen, you don't calm down, I'm gonna have to do something." Call, and he said, "Okay, calm down," and handcuffed him, and he left, and he still worked for another 9 months.
Yeah. I don't know about it. I don't know if I'm still working.
I don't think, if you're trying to get me drunk, you're trying to handcuff me. I don't know what you're up to, but he said, and according to the interview, he said, if you haven't seen it, you gotta check his interview out. He said because he had to do car payments and he wanted to have gas money. Hey, typical 15, man. What are you gonna do?
I guess, but damn, I might be robbing a store or something.
I'm not working for
I
them.
have to go through that. Yeah, I ain't working for that dude no more.
No.
And like I said, this guy was friends with Vukovic. And the day before his disappearance, he had confronted Gacy over an outstanding back pay. Because like I said, all these guys are working for him. Gacy claimed he was happy to help search for his son after his father contacted Gacy looking for him. So not that you done killed the kid. His father comes to you for help, and you're helping looking for him. No, you've already killed him.
That's horrible. What a piece of work.
He admitting to encountering Vukovic, exiting his car, waving to attract his attention. According to Gacy, Vukovic approached him saying, "I want to talk to you." He invited him into his car, then invited him back to his house to settle the issue of this overdue wage. At his home, Gacy obviously offers him a drink. That's his MO. Then conned him into allowing him his wrist to be cuffed behind his back. And he would do this saying he was doing magic tricks, like we said earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Gacy later confessed that he sat on the kid's chest for a while before strangling him. Stowed Vukovic's body in the garage, intended to bury the body in the crawl space. When his wife and stepdaughter returned home earlier than expected, he buried Vukovic under the concrete floor in the tool room extension of his garage in an empty space where he intended to dig a drain tile.
Wow. Unreal.
So his kids are there basically interrupting him, putting him back under the crawl space. So they don't even have any idea that this is going on.
Yeah, this is another one. Just like Bundy's girlfriend's living with a serial killer. This woman was living with a monster with her kids. Unbelievable.
He did finally get divorced. He admitted in 1975 to Carol that he was bisexual.
Yeah.
And wanted to have sex with, basically young men.
Yeah.
And she left. Obviously so. Rightfully so.
Rightfully so, yeah.
1 month after that, Gacy abducted and murdered an 18-year-old boy named Daryl Sampson. He was last seen alive in Chicago on April the 6th, 1976. Gacy buried him under the dining room with a cloth lodged in his throat. On May 14th, 15-year-old Randall Reifert disappeared shortly after returning home from a dental appointment. Hours after Reifert was last seen by his family, 14-year-old Samuel Stapleton vanished as he walked home from his sister's apartment. He and Reifert were close acquaintances. They were buried together in a crawl space, and investigators believe the two were murdered same evening. So I don't know if he's doing this at the same time or just in close proximity, but now he's doing Ted.
He's on fire.
Shit.
Yeah.
Together.
He has an appetite, like you said, for it, and he likes it.
June 3rd, he killed 17-year-old Michael Bonin, who disappeared while traveling from Chicago to Waukegan, I think that is. Gacy strangled Bonin with a ligature and buried him under the spare bedroom. 10 days later, Gacy murdered 16-year-old William Carroll, buried him under the common grave in the crawl space. Carroll seems to have been the first of 4 victims known to have been murdered between June 13th and August 6th. So he's on a roll here.
Yeah, it's scary.
There were between 16 and 17-year-old unidentified victims, appears to have been adults. So he's taking kids, he's taking adults, whoever he can get a hold of. He's addicted to the killing now. I think he's that's addicted. Safe to say.
He's getting good at it. He's getting efficient at it. He knows how to do it, and he's also a little husky too. He has a little weight to him, so he can outpower a lot of these kids and people. So that's why he's successful also.
He's thought to have murdered 2 identified males between August and October of 76. October 24th, abducted and killed friends Kenneth Parker and Michael Marino. The two were last seen on Clark Street in Chicago. 2 days later, 19-year-old construction worker William Bundy disappeared after informing his family he was going to a party. Bundy died of suffocation. Gacy buried the body beneath the master bedroom. Bundy apparently worked for Gacy also. So some of these kids he works for. You would think that police work back then maybe started saying some of these kids is going missing all have the same employer.
That you would think you want to look at that employer and see what's going on, especially there's maybe issues with their people should be talking. That small community like that in Norwood Park Township, you would think there'd be more going on there. But it took a while for the police, but we'll talk about the attorneys that coming up what happened, which is interesting.
In 76, there was a 17-year-old kid named Gregory Godzik. Disappeared. His girlfriend last saw him outside her house. He had worked for PDM again less than 3 weeks when he disappeared. Informed the family that Gacy had him digging trenches for some kind of drain tiles in a crawl space. Gudzik's car was found later abandoned. His parents and older sister contacted Gacy about his disappearance. Gacy claimed that he expressed a wish to run away from home. He also claimed he received answering machine messages from the boy shortly after he disappeared. When asked if he could play the messages, Gacy said he had erased them. So It seems like a lot of these kids, again, worked for him. I don't know how the police aren't piecing it back together.
Took a while
at this point, but it's a shame that they weren't kind of a little bit more on top of their game because, and we spoke about this when we covered all three, Dahmer, Bundy, and Gacy. How many fucking kids can go missing in one town before you start to like look a little bit deeper into it? Like this
can't be an epidemic of runaways.
Yeah, this isn't like Derry from the damn It movie. All these kids just going and missing for some mythical reason. I mean, these kids are just disappearing, and you would think you've got to at some point start to think, okay, we could have a serial killer on our midst. They're not all running away.
The first thing you would look at as a trained investigator is you have to look what's a common denominator between them. And what was common denominator? Young boys in the area working for whom? John Wayne Gacy.
And I mean, unfortunately, this continues, man. I mean, you're tenuring on to the next year, March 15th, 20-year-old John Prestige disappeared. Prestige was last seen leaving near Northside Restaurant. He was buried in the crawl space with the body of Francis Alexander. Above the body of Francis Alexander, Shortly before his disappearance, he had mentioned that he had obtained work with a local contractor. Again, Gacy murdered one additional unidentified youth and buried him in the crawl space spring of early 77. And on July the 5th, he killed 19-year-old Matthew Bowman. Bowman's mother last saw him in a suburban train station. He had intended to travel to Hartwood Heights for a court appointment. January 20th, 1977, he lured 19-year-old John Cizik to his house on the pretenses of buying a Plymouth Satellite. He later confessed to strangling Cizik in a spare bedroom, claiming that another guy, Rossi, was asleep. Gacy later sold the car to Rossi for $300. Now, the following month, Rossi was arrested for stealing gasoline while driving Cizik's car. The gas station attendant noted the license plate, and the police traced the car to Gacy's house. When questioned, Gacy told the officers that Cizik had sold the car to him in February, saying that he needed money to leave town.
Right.
Already you have the police coming here, checking this out, saying that he sold there to leave town. A check of the VIN confirmed the car had belonged to Cizik. The police did not pursue the matter any further, although they did inform Cizik's mother that her son had sold the car. Very close. They're close.
Very close.
They wouldn't have known how close they were to just figuring out everything that was up under that house. By the end of 77, Gacy had murdered 6 more young men between the ages of 16 and 21.
Wow.
First of these was 18-year-old Robert Gilroy, son of a Chicago police sergeant, last seen alive on September the 15th. Gilroy lived 4 blocks from Gacy's house. He was buried in the crawl space on September the 12th. Gacy had flown to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to supervise a remodeling project and did not return to Chicago until September the 16th. Because he was in another state at the time, Gilroy was last seen, and this is cited to support Gacy's claim of assistance from one or more accomplices, because that was mentioned that possibly he had somebody helping him in several of these homicides. 10 days after Gilroy was seen, 19-year-old former U.S. Marine John Mowry disappeared after leaving his mother's house. Gacy strangled Mowry and buried his body beneath the master bedroom.
Unbelievable. Yeah, but they're so close. It's frustrating with investigators again. And I know hindsight is 2020, but come on, they're so close to where he lives. A lot of these guys were working for him. They have that in common. Don't you think you want to go there and start talking and say, hey man, why are a lot of your employees disappearing? What do you think's going on here? And just start, maybe it's time to set up surveillance on this guy.
Yeah, how
See what
shitty of a
up
boss
to.
are you that 19 of your damn employees have just went missing and hightailed it out of the country or whatever?
It's crazy. That's a kind of small time policing and ends up that kind of result. But at a minimum, after you talk to guys, see his results, you start tailing this guy.
Yeah, and just
you got to tail him.
Just seeing what's going on. And I mean, we're closing in here. I mean, like I said, a lot of victims were in the 78.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Actually, December the 30th, Gacy abducted a 19-year-old student, Robert Donnelly, from a Chicago bus stop at gunpoint, drove him to his home where he raped him, tortured him, repeatedly drowned Donnelly to unconsciousness in a bathtub. As he made the statements, "Aren't we playing fun games tonight?" Can you imagine that? This creepy bastard drowning you in a bathtub. Aren't we playing fun games? Donnelly later testified at trial that he was in such pain that he asked Gacy to kill him. Gacy replied, "I'm going to get around to it." After several hours, Gacy drove Donnelly to his workplace and released him, warning him that if he complained to anyone, that they would not believe him. So I wonder if so many people that he killed, why he let that one go.
That's odd, especially brought him at gunpoint. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and you're drowning him in the tub repeatedly. It's just he's getting off on these kids being in that very vulnerable position. Donald did report the assault, however, though.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, police questioned Gacy on January the 6th. Gacy admitted to having a slave sex relationship with Donnelly, but insisted everything was consensual, adding that he didn't pay the kid money that he promised him. The police believed him and filed no charges. The following month, Gacy killed 19-year-old William Kindred, who disappeared on February the 16th after telling his fiancee, who knew Gacy, that he was going to a bar. Kindred was the final victim buried in the crawl space. On March 21st, Gacy lured 26-year-old Jeffrey Regnow into his car. Gacy chloroformed him, drove him to his house, where his arms and head were restrained and a pillory device affixed to the ceiling. His feet locked into another device. He raped and tortured him with instruments, including lit candles, whips, and repeatedly chloroformed him into unconsciousness. Gacy then dumped him into Lincoln Park, unconscious but alive. He managed to stagger to his girlfriend's apartment. Police were then informed of the assault, but did not investigate Gacy.
That's unbelievable.
What the fuck is going on with this police department here?
No, that's what I'm saying. It's so many. It took the attorney to finally say, "Listen, this is what's going on." It's unbelievable. These guys, I think, couldn't piece it together. I mean, it is clearly evident.
But now you've got two guys that's made a complaint against this guy. Yeah. He's been questioned in a stolen car or a car of somebody is missing. Umpteen victims are not. They don't even. I won't say the word victims. Umpteen runaways that work for this man. Like, at what point does somebody put on their fucking Perry Mason hat here and start to piece some of this together?
I know. That's just unreal. I saw that. I was scratching my head.
He was able to recall the Oldsmobile, the Kennedy Expressway, and the particular side streets. He and two friends staked out the Cumberland exit of the expressway. In April, Rignow saw the Oldsmobile, which he and his friends followed, the 8213 West Summerdale. Gacy was arrested on July the 15th. He faced trial for the assault and battery of Rignow. By mid-78, the crawl space had no room for further bodies.
That's right.
Gacy later confessed to the police that he considered stowing bodies in the attic, but had been worried about complications arising from leakage. Therefore, he chose to dispose of them off the I-55 bridge and the Des Plaines River. Gacy stated that he had thrown 5 bodies into that river in 1978, and one who believed it had landed on a passenger barge Only 4 were found. So if they landed on a boat, there ain't no telling where the hell they ended up.
Yeah. Yeah. This guy's out of control. Nowhere. That's unbelievable. And a barge. Wow.
I don't know if he did that on purpose or you know what. I mean, who the hell knows? The
Yeah.
first victim thrown over that bridge was Timothy O'Rourke. He was murdered mid-June after leaving his apartment to purchase cigarettes. Shortly before his disappearance, Rourke told his roommate and contractor on the northwest side that offered him a job, again with the contractor. On November the 4th, Gacy killed 19-year-old Frank Langdingen. He was last seen alive by his father walking down Foster Avenue. His naked body was found close to the inlet by the river by 2 duck hunters. On the 24th, 20-year-old James Mazzara disappeared Thanksgiving dinner with his family. Mazzara had informed his sister the day before that he was working in construction. He was last seen walking in the direction of Bughouse Square, again with the construction. But here is the one that was really the one that brought him down was Robert Peast or Pike.
That's right. Yeah.
He was abducted from a pharmacy. Now, this was not your typical kid that he was really getting used to grabbing at this point in time. This one had, and I'm not saying that none of these other victims didn't have caring parents, but this was a parent that was like coming to pick him up within hours.
Yeah, right.
Subduction. Once she got there, and he wasn't there, it was obvious that something was wrong. The police was contacted, but this time they actually had a witness putting Gacy there. So this is kind of like the first domino that begins to fall to where they start looking at Gacy.
And maybe with this small police department, it's a small municipality. They start remembering, okay, he's here now. He had that car that he had that was sold, right? He has now his employees that were missing. Maybe they start figuring out and complaints. You know what? Now it's time. But you know what also helps him? He also was a very involved in politics, right?
Mm-hmm.
That helped him.
Yep. Shortly after Gacy left, see, he come there to actually see about doing a remodeling job. And while he was within earshot of the 15-year-old boy, part-time employee, Robert came up to him. Gacy mentioned that he offered hire teenage boys with the starting wage of $5 an hour, which almost doubled his pay he was earning at the pharmacy. Shortly after Gacy left, Peace's mother arrived at the store to drive home with her son so the family could celebrate her birthday together. He asked his mother to wait, and according to what he said, some contractor wants to talk to me about a job. He left the store at 9 p.m., promising to return shortly. Peace was murdered shortly after 10 p.m. at Gacy's home. Now, this did spark an investigation. Like I said, he lured him there with the possibility of making good money. And that was obviously double, like you said, doubling the kid's salary. Gacy then duped him again to putting on the handcuffs. Subsequently, statements were made regarding the events that varied throughout time. That's one of them that he was very kind of vague on. He didn't really go into like specific detail like he did some of his other ones. Although one initial statement, he claimed that Peace failed to resist and removed the boy's trousers. He also stated that he placed a rope around his neck and the boy was crying scared. Gacy admitted to having received a phone call from a business acquaintance as Pice lay dying. Now, when he failed to return, obviously, like I said, his mom shows up telling the police something's wrong. They go to his house and question him, and they want him to come in.
That's right.
Now, he makes up a story that he had a family member pass away, and so that's why he can't come in. I think it was a couple of days before he come in. I think he went and dumped the body, if I'm not mistaken, during this time.
Yeah.
He actually ran off the road coming back. He did go in and talk to him covered in mud. They said he showed up covered in mud to claiming that he had been involved in a car accident, returning to the police station. He denied any involvement.
That's unbelievable.
And repeated that he had not offered him a job. So he denied talking to him altogether. So It's fishy enough that they do get a search warrant suspecting Gacy. They thought the kid might still be alive and was being held at his home.
Right.
So the search revealed, and this was key. I didn't see this in the documentary. The search revealed several suspicious items, including several police badges, a starter pistol, a syringe, hypodermic needle, handcuffs, books on homosexuality, pornographic films, capsules of ammonium nitrate, a dildo, 2x4s with holes drilled into each end, bottles of Valium, atropine, several driver's licenses, and a blue hooded parka, and underwear too small to fit Gacy. As we said, he was kind of a husky guy. They also found a class ring engraved with the initials JAS and a Nissan pharmacy photo with a receipt in the trash can alongside a 36-inch section of nylon rope.
You would think they want to look up that ring and see if there's anybody missing with those initials, right?
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah.
I mean, and not to add, all
that
this other
to me
shit
sounds
is pretty strange.
that to me sounds like a good old abduction/murder kit.
Exactly. I mean, I have one or two of these things in a drawer, but God, all these things combined, you're dealing with some strange shit here.
Yeah.
I mean, heavens of mercy. They started surveilling him right after this.
They put a tail on him. Yeah.
He was getting very nervous. He contacted a lawyer, was telling them, hey, these guys are, surveilling me for this, that, and the other. The lawyer had no clue about his prior, sodomy case years ago. So he's actually defending him like, hey, what are you doing? This guy's a good guy. Long story short, they actually get a second search warrant. Remember Rossi, we talked about earlier. Rossi was interviewed a second time. This time he's more cooperative. He informed detectives that in the summer of 1977, at Gacy's behest, he had spread 10 bags of lime in the crawl space in Gacy's house.
Mm-hmm.
On December 19th, investigators began compiling evidence for a second search warrant for Gacy's house, the same day Gacy's lawyers filed for the civil suit against the Plains police for harassment. The hearing for the suit was scheduled for the 22nd. That afternoon, Gacy invited surveillance detectives into his home. Really brazen, this guy.
That is.
As Officer Robinson distracted Gacy with conversation, Officer Schultz walked into his bedroom and, with an unsuccessful attempt to write down the serial number on a specific Motorola TV set that they thought belonged to John Cizik, while flushing his toilet, the officer noticed a smell that suspected could be rotting corpses emanating from the heat duct. Now, the officers who had searched Gacy's house previously failed to notice this because the house had been cold at the time. So this let them know that there was something not on the up and up.
Right. No, that smell is, you only make so many excuses where you got rotting, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they interviewed Rossi on December the 20th when questioned to where he believed Gacy had concealed Peace's body. Rossi replied Gacy may have placed the body in the crawl space. Now, a lot of these guys that were down there, he was actually doing these jobs like digging areas, but he told them specific areas where to dig. And if they got off track, he would get extremely upset because the reason being, obviously, they were going to stumble on something else if they dug off from where he told them to dig. He was also informed that attempt to rape him in 1976. He stated that after he and Gacy had returned home, Gacy had turned pale after seeing a cloud of mud on his carpet and immediately entered the crawl space to look for evidence of digging. When asked where he had been to the crawl space, he replied to one area which he had spread lime. There was also dug trenches, which Gacy had explained were for drainage pipes. That's what he was telling him these things were.
All right.
Now, the pressure, like we said, was getting to Gacy. I'm not sure. I think at that point, he probably knew it was a matter of time. But he drives to his attorney's office and confesses.
That's unbelievable.
Just the whole 9 yards, tells him, holds up a paper of Peace's body and says he killed him.
Yeah, you think he was smart enough to do all this, keep quiet. Why all of a sudden crack like that? Let them make your case against you, but he cracked. Fascinating how he just cracked like that quickly.
Yeah. And like I said, that he done a full conscience admittance of guilt to everything that he had done to his lawyer. Wow. And then got up that next morning and hauled ass. Like, actually, I think his lawyer said he fell asleep during the middle of the confession. Once he woke up, I think he finished, and then he immediately got up and left and said he had errands to do. It's like, what did he think he was going to do after he told his lawyer that?
Yeah, his lawyers had to tell the police immediately what they knew.
Yeah. After being informed, the police found human remains in the crawl space. They went back in there and they did find the remains in the crawl space. And this was like the most chilling thing was they didn't know what all they were going to find. It was like body after body after body. And what made it so bad was there was like a sump pump that was turned off. So a lot of that was flooded. They had to wait for that water to get sucked out. And I mean, it was the worst thing I can't imagine being on that crew. They pulled bodies out for weeks.
Yeah, they did. I was looking at the paper, local papers at the time, and he said 8 bodies found now, 16 bodies found now. It just, and the mass of people, because a lot of people spent time there because he had a lot of parties also as Pogo the Clown and fundraisers and everything else. And they were in shock. There was no doubt about that.
Yeah, you imagine how many people were there for barbecues and shit, not noticing the smell. And he drew them a map basically laying out where all these bodies were. Yeah. And I mean, it was just, I'd never seen anything like it. And then he drove to show them where he had dumped Peace's body. So he's starting to give up everything here. I don't know if this was just his way of peace within himself. I don't really know. What do you think the reason was why he confessed here? Was it just he could tell the walls were closing in and he wanted to be the one to turn himself in? That way he could say he didn't give them the justification of catching him?
That could be. That could be an angle there. I mean, it's hard to tell I can't understand a psychopath, sociopath who does things like this. So at the end, the gig is up, possibly. That could be it.
I mean, he said he told officers that he wanted to clear the air. In the early morning of December 22nd, in the presence of his lawyers, Gacy provided a formal statement which he confessed to murdering approximately 30 young males, all of who claimed to enter of his house willingly. Some victims were referred to by name. Gacy claimed to not know or remember most of them, as like I said, he was picking up drifters here, there, and yonder. Most people that come in contact with Gacy did not make it. There was one story that I wanted to talk about who actually did make it. Another one, Steve Nimmers. Now, this was back, I think when he was running the chicken business. Steve and some other kids had went over to Gacy's house for a party.
Oh, yeah.
They're playing pool, and they talk about a party they're having the next day, which somehow or another, this kid winds up staying at Gacy's house because these kids were driving like far away. They've been drinking. So he said his options were either to get in the car with them and drive when they were drinking or just stay at Gacy's house. So he decided to stay at Gacy's house. Now they're playing pool. He said they actually start playing pool for money. He's beating Gacy. Then Gacy's like, I'll tell you what, let's play one game for high stakes. Let's play for a sex act. If I win, you do a sex act on me. If you win, I do a sex act on you.
I think it's time to get out of there with that one.
Yeah, so he immediately balks. He's like, I'm not doing that. F all that. I'm good. So he balks at that. His idea is after that, I'm just kidding. Have you ever seen a stag film? So then he puts on porn to distract the kid.
Yeah.
So he puts on a porn film, and the guy says he's watching the porn film, and Gacy leaves the room. Next thing you know, he said he heard the door open, Gacy come in. Boom. Got a gun to his head. Here's a click. Gacy tells him to stand up and take his pants down.
Oh, boy.
This kid is scared to death. The kid finally stands up. He's crying, telling him not to do anything. Don't hurt him. He takes his pants down. And then Gacy laughs at him. Tells him to pull his pants up and come over to the bar. Said he likes to see what people do under pressure. That was what got him off. So the kid's like freaked out at this point, but he doesn't have a way to call anybody. He's a long way. Don't want to leave the house in the middle of the night. So he goes in the bedroom. Now he says he's in the bedroom, sleeping, trying to sleep best he can. And he said he heard something open up, the door open up. And you know how sometimes when you're laying there at nighttime, you have like this little area of light
that
you can see. Says he sees Gacy over top of him with a knife.
Oh, boy.
And he's telling him he's fixing to, basically have commit sex acts on him. And the kid again breaks down again. And finally, Gacy just puts the knife down, said he was frustrated that he couldn't break him into doing the sex act. And the next morning, he drives them to where they're supposed to be.
Yeah,
Like,
I think after the
kid made
gun,
out great.
I think once they put the gun to your head and it goes click, I think it's time to get out of there. I don't think it's time to see if you can stay the night. Oh man.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. They did try to go with an insanity defense.
Yeah.
Gacy. Didn't work. Obviously, I mean, by this time, this whole town is flabbergasted. The neighbors they were interviewing, were shocked. They didn't have any idea. Closing arguments here on March 11th. The final arguments by both prosecution and defense attorneys began. Prosecuting attorney Terry Sullivan outlined Gacy's history of abusing youth, testimony of efforts to avoid detection, and describing how surviving victims Voorhees Donnelly is living dead. Think about that. He's messed him up so bad. Referring to Gacy as the worst of all murderers, Sullivan stated. John Gacy has accounted for more human devastation than many earthly catastrophes. I tremble when thinking about just how close he came to getting away with it all. That's bone chilling, man.
Yeah, and there's been people who have been getting away for years, and Gacy didn't, for sure.
The state had a 4-hour closing. Sam Amarante spoke for the defense. He accused Sullivan of scarily referring to the evidence as his own closing argument and as arousing hatred against his client. So they're trying to do whatever they can to help him. I understand that, you're a lawyer, you got to do your job, but I don't know if I could take that case.
I wouldn't be doing that either. I couldn't do that.
He attempted to, portray Gacy as driven by compulsion and was unable to control, his urges. I don't really buy that. But I guess he's got to do whatever he can.
He got to see what sticks, and hopefully you get one juror that agrees with you.
Yeah. He was eventually sent to death, man. On being sentenced, Gacy was transferred to the Menard Correctional Center, where he remained on death row for 14 years. Isolated in his prison cell, he began to paint. He drew inspiration from a wide range of sources for his artwork, depicting subjects as diverse as clowns, including himself as Pogo or Patches, Christ, birds, skulls, his own home, John Dillinger. Gacy's paintings have been displayed in exhibits and sold at auctions. Before his trial, Gacy initiated contact with journalist Russ Ewing, to whom he granted numerous interviews between 79 and 81. He later collaborated with Tim Cahill to publish the book Buried Dreams. This information Gacy divulged regarding circumstances of the first murder and would prove instrumental in establishing the identity of his very first victim. That's the guy we spoke about earlier.
Yeah.
After his incarceration, he read numerous books, filed appeals. He tried to do everything he could to, stay alive as long as he could. That was not, obviously didn't happen. His appeal to 1985, the decision that he would be executed in the Illinois Supreme Court, upheld the conviction, setting a new execution date for January 11th, 1989. After the Supreme Court denied his final appeal in October 1993, it was formally set for execution of May 10th, 1994. Now,
the
talk about his last meal.
Yeah. Oh, his last meal. That's unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. You shouldn't have got. That's why it's appalling to see a monster like this even given a decent meal like that. Here's your slop, and now eat it, and now you're gonna be executed. That's it.
I wouldn't give him shit for a last meal.
Yeah.
I mean, it ain't like you're gonna need it where you're going.
A basket of fried chicken, shrimp. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, French fry. Basket of fried chicken, a dozen fried shrimp, French fries, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke. That evening, he received the last rites from a Catholic priest before being escorted to the Statesville execution chamber. In the hours leading to Gacy's execution, a crowd estimated of over 1,000 gathered outside the correctional center. The majority were in favor of the execution. A small number were anti-death penalty. I think even them, you gotta hop on the train at this point.
No, you have to.
Yeah, 33. I can see if it's a one-off and you're trying to get somebody. There's always that chance that something was off. But 33, that's a big number, man. A lot
I
of them
think
are wearing T-shirts.
and we both think it's more than that.
Yeah, a lot of them are wearing T-shirts. No tears for the clown.
Yeah.
Before the execution began, did you read about that? Where before it began, the tubes began to clog up in the IV. Did you hear
I
about
hear
that?
that. No.
Yeah. So before the execution began, the chemicals used to affect the execution solidified unexpectedly, clogging the IV. The execution team replaced the clogged tubes, and the execution resumed. The entire process took 18 minutes. So it prolonged it a little bit. In a way, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, let him suffer.
Yeah,
His
I'm
victims
okay with
suffer. He
that.
can suffer.
It was written off to, them not having much experience given that, but it still said he got a much easier death than any of his victims, which is, the
That's
absolute truth.
true. That is true. And of course,
Gacy,
his last words before, kiss my ass.
kiss my ass before they start pumping this shit in his veins. And
Yeah, no remorse.
confirmed death 12:58 a.m. on May 10th, 1994. His brain was removed and in the possession of Helen Morris, a witness to the defense at Gacy's trial, who has interviewed Gacy and other serial killers in an attempt to isolate common personality traits between violent sociopaths. His body was cremated, and I hope they just threw it down a fucking sewer.
That's right. Deserves.
This is one of the worst dudes.
Flush in the toilet. Just flush in the toilet.
I mean, and there's still so much more that we could even talk about with this. I was just trying to give you some of the broad strokes. I encourage everybody, obviously, to go check out some of the books you've written, as you've got chapters dedicated to him. There is documentaries, as we mentioned, but I mean, just what a
monster.
Pictures in these documentaries. This was like, we recovered Ramirez, right? Ramirez, you've got very few pictures of him. He was not a social person. He was not a socialite. He was not a politician. He was very much what his name was, the Night Stalker. He was out at night. He was killing people. Gacy was this guy that was killing people in, very horrible ways, torturing kids, raping them, and was, smiling and shaking hands and giving kids balloons. I mean, this is
just like Ted Bundy, right?
Yeah.
Just like Bundy. Very charismatic, out there, and Jekyll and Hyde. He was a typical Jekyll and Hyde.
He's the prototypical reason why people nowadays, I think, don't trust people as easy as they used to. Getting trust nowadays is very hard. My wife trusts absolutely nobody, especially when it comes to our son. Like,
I agree.
He's only allowed to go to like maybe 2 people's houses that aren't family.
Right.
And we live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of people, and he's got a lot of friends, but she is very particular. And all those friends that he's allowed to go to, he's been friends with for like over a decade.
No, you should try to. It's unfortunate, but that's the times that has been going on. You need to learn from. I think people need to take something and learn from history, because even though this happened in the 60s and 70s, it still happens today.
Oh yeah,
it still happens today.
Yeah, now maybe not 33 in a house buried today, but just getting the kids like that, it still happens. People put themselves in positions to be able to be around kids. That's what you got to watch out for. And it's sad that you have to watch out for people in those positions, like churches or cops. I mean, even look at guys like Dennis Rader, who were neighborhood watchman type people, that would go around and write citations for grass being so high. I mean, you just always got to keep an open eye, man. And that old saying,
or the original Night Stalker, D'Angelo, right? A police officer, law enforcement.
Yeah.
He evolved from serial rapist to serial murder. And it takes years later through DNA tracing a family tree to finally pin it on him. Years after he stopped in the mid-'80s, and I think 2017, 18 is in my book when they finally popped him. And he's still alive. He's doing life
in California. I wonder if he ever thought he would be caught.
No, I don't think so either.
Especially with that big of a gap.
Yeah, maybe we should do a show on him next time.
That's what I'm thinking. That might have to be our next one.
It's a good one. It's fascinating how they caught him. Fascinating. That's, to me, I found it fascinating.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, that's about it, man, for what we can put into this episode here. We're going about an hour and 20. John Wayne Gacy, aka Pogo the Clown, just a sick fucking dude. And we're gonna put up throughout this interview some stills of them bringing stuff out of the house.
Oh yeah,
that was I can't imagine what those cops were going through. I was listening to the interviews on the Netflix documentary. He was saying he would go home just to get some rest, like for a few hours, and by the time he come back, there'd be 2 or 3 more bodies they've dug out. because you got to think a lot of these bodies have been down there for some of them years, very decomposed. You want to make sure you're getting them out together. You want to make sure the bones are, with the skeleton that it's coming out with. You don't want to just, start breaking stuff apart because then it's going to be harder to identify. That had to be like the most awful thing ever, just taking those bodies out.
No, that's heartbreaking. And for the families and suffering, and those kids never had a life.
Yeah.
They never had a life. He snuffed that out of them.
And for some of them, probably in very close proximity, probably maybe had driven by that house numerous times and thinking that, he was actually helping this community by giving some of these young kids work, just to have that, known that all these kids were, their final days was in that house and then eventually buried in the crawl spaces. Just
I think that's the reason why most people, I think, when you see an animal, a monster like this, want the death penalty.
Yeah.
You don't want to pay for life for this guy taking care of them. You want him executed. You want a piece of work of this executed. But you know what? Dahmer would have done life. It wasn't for him being killed in prison. Only months apart from Gacy. Interesting. 94. Interesting year for sure.
Yeah. Two of the worst to go down for sure, man. Well, that about wraps it up here for John Wayne Gacy, my friend. Excellent episode there, pal.
Excellent, man. Well done. I think they're going to enjoy this one. And Ramirez should be coming out shortly before this, so it should be another good one. And check out Albert Fish. If you haven't seen that one, that's another one. And we've done a ton of shows before. I think like 8 shows like that. So plenty of content they can watch between us.
Did you ever hear that short that I put out with Albert Fish detailing the Grace Budd murder and the Billy Gaffney murder? Matt Cox heard that and he was like, "Where the hell did you get that voice?" And I said, "Believe it or not, that's my voice." I said, I read the confession letter that he wrote and just accidentally was playing around with some of the settings and gave it that distorted sound. My daughter, who now lives out in Seattle, Washington, I sent it to her because I know she's watched the Albert Fish documentaries. And she was like, "Who the hell is that talking?" I said, "That's me." She's like, "I'm so creeped out right now. I got to go to the hospital." So
that was by accident too. That was pretty good.
Yeah, by accident. Very creepy. And I put a picture of his face up there while it's going on. So just really, really creepy, man. Go check that out. Albert Fish was a good one. Richard Ramirez, Night Stalker. And here we are with John Wayne Gacy, a.k.a. Pogo the Clown. I think that'll do it,
maybe the next one will be Joseph D'Angelo, the original Night Stalker, the Golden State Killer. Unbelievable way how they caught him. I didn't think so either, but that's DNA tracing. Phenomenal. Family tree.
Yep. All right, my friend. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for today's episode. I'm Hollywood Wade. That is Ignacio Esteban. And unfortunately, we're out of time. Tune in next week for an all new episode of Crime and Entertainment. Ignacio, we appreciate it,
brother.
my friend.
Enjoy, brother. Take care. Peace.